We're going to call the meeting to order. Randy, I'm going to ask you once again to be our guest reverend and lead us in a prayer.
Okay. During this time of challenging times that we face, both economically, physically, and medically, let's always keep in mind and give thanks to God, our Creator, for the opportunity to be here, to serve our community, and to help others who are in need. In God's name, we ask for this assistance during these times. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Dan, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Yes, I will. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And Nancy, since you can multitask so well, why don't you lead us?
Oh, no, I can't do that and drive. Oh, well, okay, here we go. Is it the truth?
Is it the truth? Is it
fair to all concerned?
All concerned.
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Will it be beneficial to all
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 concerned?
concerned.
Thank you, Nancy. I hope you did not wreck anywhere.
I hope I get on the road without killing myself.
Okay, we got Lisa joining us.
All
Hi,
right, we're going to
George.
go right. Oh, Cliff, you wanted to say something about our charitable endeavors.
Yes. I need to be monitored here by a couple of numbers people. So Randy and Steve are going to have to kind of track the big numbers that I'm going to share. I want you to keep the number 32 in mind. 32 is the number of meals each of you, as members of the Rotary Club of Metairie, will have provided to first responders and people in need of food by the end of May, by the end of this month. When I say provided, I mean purchased, prepared, and delivered by local grocery stores, local restaurants, and several members of our club. Following is a quick picture of the meal that you and I, will have provided during the corona pandemic. The total number of meals delivered during the last 5 weeks is 1,400. 750 meals for homeless individuals served by Grace at the Green Light. 420 box lunches for Holly Grove residents served by Trinity Community Center. 180 meals for families with children at Ala Delon Elementary School, and 50 box lunches for frontline police officers employed by Jefferson Parish Sheriff's Office. And looking ahead to this week and next, we're scheduled to deliver another 200 box lunches to Trinity Community Center. So this again means by the end of May, our club will have supported, and it means you have supported, purchase, preparation, and delivery of approximately 1,600 meals for frontline workers and for people most food vulnerable during the period of the pandemic. That number, 1,600, represents 32 meals provided by each of you as members of our 50-member club. So I just want to give you a high five for the service that you provided.
Thank you, Cliff. Outstanding. All right, we're going to go right now to our speaker because I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions. Our speaker today is Professor Peter. It's pronounced Ricchiuti. He founded the Birkenrod Reports and Investment Research Program at Tulane University. He leads a team of more than 200 of the university's business students in the search of the occasional undervalued and overlooked stocks in 6 southern states. He and his program have been featured in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, CNBC, CNN, and the Nightly Business Report. So without any further ado, Professor Peter, would you please take over?
All righty. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Dan and I actually sort of knew each other. We sat next to each other at the Saints games, and we high-fived each other, which I guess we couldn't do anymore. So we will, I don't know what you do after a touchdown anymore.
Right.
But thank you so much. I wanted to talk a little bit this morning about a couple of things, a little bit about Tulane, a little bit about the financial markets, and a little bit about the New Orleans economy. And so I've put some slides together here, and I think that'll work.
Bring that chair over if you want.
There we go. let's see. Obviously, COVID-19 is the big thing affecting all three of those pieces right now. Let's see.
Okay. Yeah, that's good.
All right. Little disclaimer, so you won't sue me. I don't know if that happens in Rotary or not. It would certainly pay for more meals to people. I think that'd be good. But a couple of things to start off with is the big argument in the economy right now is what is the recovery going to look like? I don't think there's an argument that there'll be a recovery. I think that's all gonna come together. But what is it going to look like? And the stock market is betting that the recovery will be a V-shaped recovery, and that's what you see here, kind of a big drop and really a very quick improvement. And you can see that because the NASDAQ, which of course is mainly tech stocks, that is actually higher than it was before coronavirus. And the overall market, the S&P 500, is only down about 10 or 12% from there. So this is an interesting situation because, obviously it's betting on the come. Corporate earnings are projected to drop about 35%, and certainly the world's not 12% worse than it was before. It's a lot worse than that. So this is kind of where the market's made its bets. The other kind of shape, there's actually two other major shapes that you see all the time. The U-shaped recovery, and that would be that we would fall apart like we have, kind of ride it through for a little bit, and then start the upslope on the other end. And that's what a lot of people are looking for. And the third is really, frankly, is kind of the doomsday recovery. And this is not priced into the markets. It is what a lot of people, particularly in the medical profession and scientists, believe will happen. And that's why it kind of looks like a two teeth here, but that shouldn't be what it's a W-shaped recovery where we fall apart, we come back quickly, we basically have to be homebound again because the virus is spread. We go back down to where it was, and then finally start to come back to a formal recovery. I think the problem in here is that would be really demoralizing to business and to people and everything else. So that's not what people are hoping for. It is tough to believe that we've done a good job at this because U.S. has 5% of the world's population, and we have 30+% of the cases and 30+% of the deaths, which is pretty bad. So if we look at where we are here, New Orleans, I'd like to be more optimistic. I'm certainly optimistic in the long run. This is like my favorite place in the whole world. I've been here 37 years. Is the structure of the economy puts us really in a difficult spot. Tourism and hospitality drive the market. And when we use tourism and hospitality, let's get a little broader: restaurants, live music, bars, festivals, sports, all of that would come under that category. And that will be the last end of the economy to recover. And if you want to get a little historical background on here, after 9/11, it took 3 years for air travel to get back to where it was. So the idea that we're going to snap back in here just doesn't seem like it's in the cards. If we look at the way other industries are doing, they're coming back a little bit quicker. Obviously, healthcare, and we have a big piece of that. That's going to be very strong and grow very, very quickly. Manufacturing is doing better. But these basically, if you look at those points on the bullet points, these are all things that involve people getting very close to each other, shoulder to shoulder. And that's not what people are going to sign up for. I think what's going to happen is the first wave in is going to be kind of a staycation thing, which is going to be us going out to restaurants and such. The next will be kind of driving it from places you could drive to New Orleans from, which might be maybe Houston over to the Panhandle and maybe up to Jackson or such. That might be the first. And then the overall portion that people are expecting is that the young will come back before the older will. I mean, they're just going to feel, how the young people are. They're kind of like they think they're bulletproof, and I think they will be the first ones to come through. On the sports end, I host a radio show every week called Out to Lunch, and it's on the National Public Radio station here in New Orleans, 89.9. And we have, for the last 9 weeks, we've changed the format. The format of the show is that we take two small business people or entrepreneurs and bring them to Commander's Palace for lunch. And we just have a kind of a fun, casual conversation, trying to find out the joys and tribulations of running a business. And it's been a real hit. We've been doing it for 9 years, so we've had over almost 600 guests. But in the last 9 weeks, we've changed it to combining our New Orleans, Baton Rouge, and Lafayette shows on their public radio stations, and having at that point just talking about things to help businesses. And that's what we've been doing, is whether it's talking about the idiosyncrasies of small business loans, or how to deal with healthcare issues, or different things that other businesses have worked on as they pivot. And we had on last week, I guess it'll air next week, we taped it this week, is the CFO of the Saints, and of course he's the CFO of the Pelicans as well. And there's not, he wouldn't say yes or no. I don't think he knows if the Saints will actually be playing the way we think they're going to be playing. You know, are they going to play the games? Are they going to play them to empty stadiums? All that is going to be interesting. He did make a very interesting point, though, is that 40% of their revenue comes from things that are dealing with in stadiums. So that would be tickets, concessions, the signs you see inside the Superdome. All that accounts for about 40% of revenue. You probably have watched baseball trying to get their act together and figuring out a way for the owners to take a haircut and the players to take a haircut. It's going to be, they did admit that baseball will sort of be, since they're the first out of the gate, they'll probably be creating the system that we end up using in here. By the way, I watched a Korean baseball game. It taped because it's like 3 a.m, but I watched it the other night with my wife, and the players are very good, but it's really weird in a fanless stadium. It's they even had a mascot trying to rouse up cardboard fans, which I thought was a very difficult chore, really, is for them. And then on the other side for our economy is oil and gas, which has been an unmitigated disaster for the last 5.5 years. The Gulf of Mexico is very little going on. Inside the business, they refer to it as the Dead Sea. Prices went from that technicality of going negative of oil, which is just dealing with the contract coming in. But, and it's increased a little bit since then, so it's up around $30 a barrel. The problem is, in the Gulf of Mexico, you need about $60 a barrel, and really believe that's going to stay in place to really get, work on a $1 billion project. At $30, $35 a barrel, the shale fields in West Texas start to come on again because they can make a little bit of money, and that'll create the supply that'll hold the price down. So the oil and gas business is really rough, and I really don't see a light at the end of the tunnel on that. I know it's been cyclical in the past, and people say that, but the reason it's different this time, and those are the 4 most dangerous words in finance, it's different this time, is the fact that alternatives are coming. There was never a case for that before, and they're coming a lot quicker than anybody believes. So that's something we've got to factor in here. And I do think we're doing a pretty good job of diversifying the economy. On the radio show, we get people in all kinds of different businesses, and quite a bit in tech, which should be pretty insulated from all this. And you get a lot of people that are working from home. One of the things we'd like to push is that if you're working from home, why not move to a place where you have a great home? You know, I think about 5% of America always, after a couple of beers thinks, I'm going to move to New Orleans. So this might be the opportunity. We think the coronavirus impact is going to have a lot of the impacts. Here's one that we think is kind of interesting, is less globalization. And I mean that really kind of in the supply chain kind of way of thinking of things. We have basically over the last 40 years tried to wring out all the costs possible in building an automobile or a refrigerator or something like that. And so if we could get a small component from the Philippines, we'll use it. And if we could get a door built in Japan, we'll ship it in if it saved us money. I think that era is over. And the new era is not to throw costs to the wind, but the most important thing will be resiliency. And I think that'll be a lot more production in the United States. That's very positive. There are some negatives to it. If other nations sort of take the same tact, our export business is going to drop. So it might be 6 one, half dozen of the other. And I think if we look a little further out, we'll see that cost of that ability to not bring in the cheapest product from abroad is going to raise costs, and it's going to raise inflation. And I think that's really a big deal because I've been in this business, the investment business, for 40 years. And we haven't had inflation since the first couple of years I was in there in the Carter, in the beginning of the Reagan administration. So that's something we may have to very much get used to. And I think when inflation goes up, you're going to see demand for higher wages. Obviously not right now with the huge unemployment numbers. The unemployment numbers, the filing for unemployment came out this morning. It was 24.4 million more people filing for unemployment. Increased inflation would bring increased interest rates. That's another thing we haven't seen in 40 years. And interest rates are basically at zero. We're pricing in a deflationary scenario, but maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe you actually start to get this inflation, which I don't think anybody is really prepared for. A couple other trends I think you'll see is more corporate succession planning. In the past, it's always been, Joe will always be here. He'll always be CEO. But the world just seems more vulnerable now. And I think companies, and particularly public companies, are going to be asked, where is your bench strength? I need to see 2 or 3 people below a lot of positions as you go down the chain to believe that you won't be disrupted if a person is no longer able to do this. I think the other thing I think you'll see is a lot of R&D spending, research and development, which is very positive, and a lot of increasing mergers and acquisitions. There's just too many companies out there really for an economy the way we have it now. And I think you'll see, oil field service companies merging. I think you'll see banks merging. There's way too many retailers. This is sort of what's in the cards. Who's gaining? Because there's winners and everything. There's an old saying, there's a bull market somewhere, and there is. Obviously, e-commerce is terrific growth we've seen in there, and I think it's moved into a new level because you find grandparents now talking about having a Zoom meeting with their family. That once you get there, once you begin to order online more and feel comfortable, it's going to be a bigger piece of your purchasing. Telehealth is going to be huge. I just had a telehealth meeting with my doctor yesterday morning. In fact, I had the guy on from Blue Cross Blue Shield on the show, and I said, after this, do you think we'll see a lot of bricks and mortar building in hospitals? And I thought the answer was definitely yes. It was kind of a rhetorical question, but he said no, because a big percentage of the healthcare that's done can be done through telehealth. And so that wasn't the case. Esports, people play video games competitively. That's booming. Working remotely, I think, is not a temporary phenomenon at all. Up until now, we've always thought if Bob was at home, he was just goofing off, and they're not. In fact, Silicon Valley came out, basically everybody but Apple came out and said, don't bother even thinking about coming to work before the end of the year. Just stay at home, and we're going to look at it later. And also, since you're going to be home so much, I'll buy you a new chair. So that's kind of what's happened. I think that has very big implications for office space, by the way. A different way to work. One of the things realtors talk about is in the commercial space is hoteling, which is sort of that you would sort of platoon people. You would have Bob working home one week with Janice in the office, and the next week it would switch off. So it might look a lot like that. That would have impact on restaurants in the area. There wouldn't be as many people as such. And but some things aren't going to work. Like I don't know if any of you have tried dating on Zoom, but that seems very difficult. I think that would be a real chore. The oil industry, and where do we get this information, by the way? I started 26 years ago. I started a program called Birkenroad Reports at Tulane in the Freeman School of Business. And we've been named the #1 experiential learning program in the world. We beat 500 universities from 43 countries. And we basically take the students, 200 of them every year, break them up into teams of 5, and then assign them to one of 40 small cap publicly traded companies in Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida, because we think that's not only is it close to us, but we think we're a lot of the bargains, the stocks, the companies that Wall Street doesn't know are. And so they write a very extensive 24, 30-page report, and they do excellent work. It goes out to thousands and thousands of investors. It's all free. It's called, if you go to birkenroad.org, you can see the reports they've written. And a lot of them are companies you wouldn't even think about here. You don't even know we're public. For instance, we don't follow Entergy because that's a big company, has a lot of coverage on Wall Street. But, we follow a company called Crown Crafts, which is in Gonzales, kind of between New Orleans and Baton Rouge, that is the largest maker of baby bibs in the world. and all the things that go inside a crib. So it's a lot of companies you haven't heard of. And so what we do follow about 20% of our companies are in the oil business. So we've known a lot about them for 26 years, and we're talking to executives all the time. I think between that and the show at Commanders each week, probably have a front row seat to the region's economy. So we talk and listen a lot. And we also have a mutual fund, the Birken Road Mutual Fund, that's managed by Hancock Bank. That's been open for about 19 years. And it's all made of these kind of small stocks in the Deep South. And it is outperformed over those 19 years. It's outperformed 96% of all the nation's mutual funds. It trades publicly under HHBUX. So it's been a fun exercise. I've been looking at the oil industry here in this slide, and I said, I've fallen and I can't get up, which was that ad for that thing you wear around your neck years ago. First of all, the rise of electric vehicles will be a big deal. I know a lot of people are thinking it's years and years off. The tipping point is probably when we get to the fleet to about 2 to 3%. Right now, it's not easy to get a charging station. I talk to people all the time, and I go, "Where are you going to fill up? Whole Food?" But that is, the way capitalism works. And capitalism works that you're going to go to bed on a Tuesday night with no charging stations and wake up Wednesday morning, and there's going to be one on every corner. And so that's a reality that's coming down the pike. And 70% of all oil is used for transportation. So that's a big deal. The distinction, by the way, because I know we're an energy center here, but sometimes you forget who's fueling what. Electricity is generated by natural gas, coal, solar, and wind. And now, for years and years and years, decades, coal was the largest producer of fuel for electricity. And now it's natural gas, and renewables are coming up very, very quickly. So we'll see where that goes. And planes, trains, and automobiles are, mainly run almost exclusively on oil, except for the electric cars. So when we look at the future fuel, and by the way, we're going to need a ton of fuel. We're going to need it's hard to even figure out how much electricity we're going to need. I mean, there's no question about that. And on the electricity side, you can see that coal, the demand for coal, the percentage of that fuel that's generated by coal is going to drop. Nuclear is going to drop. Renewables is going to go up pretty significantly between here and 2040. And natural gas will be a big player. This is natural gas is much more important than oil to the state of Louisiana. So this is actually good news in here. If you want to, coal has had it. I know there's people in Washington that are supporting coal, but it's more expensive. It's filthy. It just doesn't make any sense. It's part of some Black Lungs Matter initiative. It just doesn't make any sense at all. This, by the way, is the Kentucky Coal Museum in Louisville, and it is now powered by solar. So I think every once in a while, that is the end. You can kind of tell when the end has occurred. The biggest, most exciting thing in energy is LNG, liquefied natural gas. And that's all happening just southwest of where we are. It's happening in Cameron, Lake Charles, those areas. And what it is, it's a fascinating system. And they've spent over $50 billion to develop this. This is the largest private investment in the history of the country. And so if we look at it, this is what they're doing. We have found so much natural gas, particularly in the oil shale drilling in West Texas, where, and we've been to West Texas with the students. I don't know if you've ever been there, but it's a lot like Mars. What they're looking for oil, and natural gas is a byproduct of it. So you get a ton of natural gas being produced. Well, so much of it, so much so that the prices dropped dramatically. 15 years ago, natural gas sold at $8 to $10 a thousand cubic feet. Now it's $1.50. And so they take the natural gas, they put it in these pipelines, and they basically ship it to where it's needed, to the chemical plants and such. But a ton of it goes to Lake Charles and Cameron. Then they get that natural gas and they freeze it. Now, way beyond freezing, they drop it to 265 degrees below zero. And it shrinks the natural gas into 1/600th of its size. And then they load it on these ships. Well, why do they do all that? Well, the reason they're doing that is we're buying the natural gas here at about $1.50. Then there's the cost of freezing it and shipping it and all that. But when they bring it over, they can get $4 to $5 a thousand cubic feet in Europe, and sometimes $8 to $10 in Asia. So what it is, when you step back a bit. It's arbitrage. And the amount of money that's going to go into this is just phenomenal. And so we'll have to keep an eye on that part of the state. U.S. leadership. I have a lot of faith in the United States. I mean, we're going to be fine. I'm not one of those doomsday people. I run into them all the time, and you have to kind of fight them off, you know. But U.S. leadership, the U.S. has become a science-led economic juggernaut, and that's really what's done it for us. We are the innovators. We are the breakthrough people all over the world, and we'll continue to be. In energy, for instance, we're using less and finding more. Technology, life sciences. But it's kind of funny. There's a small but vocal group in the United States that just don't believe in science, you know, whether it's climate change or vaccinations or what it is. And my favorite group is the group, and I don't know why I attract this group, but the group that always tells me that we staged the moon landing. I just don't know about that group. Because we know that's not true because, you know, Armstrong walked on the moon. I mean, Louis Armstrong walked on the moon there in 1969. There he is right there, brought his trumpet along, and that was a good thing. He was a hometown boy, did very good, very proud of him. So science is the leadership in the United States. The financial markets, I'm kind of surprised at the financial markets, the fact that it's bounced back so quickly. Obviously, investors are betting on a very steep, very quick rebound in corporate profits. I think that's a little too optimistic, but we came into this pandemic with very expensive stock prices, bloated government deficits and debt, tremendous amount of debt, more than we'd ever had, and beginning of softness in manufacturing and capital spending. So the economy was good, but there were signs of weakness. Bear markets, by the way, the average bear market is, since World War II, has the market drop about 33%. At the worst point in mid-March, we dropped 30%, so pretty close. The average bear market lasts 14 months, and we've just spent like 2 months into it. So it seems odd that you would that would be the whole bear market. It's just those several weeks. That does seem like an odd way to go. If you look at the dot-com bust of 2000. That took 7 years to get the NASDAQ back to where it was. If you look at 2008, 2009, the Great Recession, that took 3 years to get the market back to where it is. So the fact that this is it, and that all it took was several weeks, seems to be difficult. People tend to gravitate to what's hot. We do at Burkenroad Reports is look for what's not. We think we can get better bargains at stocks that nobody's talking about. I know when I go to a crawfish boil and people are talking about the stocks they own or they love the market, I immediately go home and sell, you know. So it's this is kind of, we see, it's kind of interesting what's going on. I read a great piece in Schwab this morning, and they were saying that what's moving in the market is the most speculative kind of investments, and that they thought, and this is a little crazy, but it might be true, they thought that people that used to do sports betting don't have a chance to do it anymore, and they've moved over to the stock market, which is kind of frightening, really. And what they're buying, like, you know, people buying stock in Zoom, for instance, you know, we're using it here. We use it a few times a day. You got to remember these stocks move up very, very quickly when a scenario changes. So a lot of this good is already built into the price. There's two guys in a garage somewhere that are working on something else that's going to be better. It's very, very, very difficult. One of the great stories in this whole pandemic in terms of stock market analysis is that there is a company called Zoom Technologies. It's a bankrupt company in China and has the ticker symbol ZOOM. And people thought that was this Zoom. And they drove the stock price up in a couple of days from 20 cents to $22. And it wasn't this Zoom company. So it's kind of people are buying Peloton. You know, the people would never leave the house and they would work out and such. I think there's a lot of good stocks, a lot of cheap stocks, if you have some patience, that are pretty unloved right now. A bear market is basically, I didn't want to use a scary bear, so I used Yogi Bear. And the first stage of a bear market is denial. Stocks fall from their highs. People think the bull market will last forever. Next is reality. Stocks continue to decline. Investors realize how weak the economy really is. And then where investors want to get in is the surrender part, whereas fear of deeper losses in a recession becomes so worrisome, then investors give up on stocks and they set the stage for a rebound. I don't think that we're there yet. I think we're sort of in between 1 and 2, but that's just this man's opinion, and that's what makes a market. So we'll see. The average American is very invested abroad. The average American, not institutionals and pensions and all that, but people like you and me, have about 10% of our portfolio in non-US stocks. And that is kind of odd and not particularly good, because US stocks now represent less than half of all the stocks out there. So a truly diversified portfolio would have more than the average American has invested abroad. Although I think the US market is going to come back. I'm very bullish on the country and the country's economy, but probably more diversification needs to come into a portfolio. One of the things people get wrong is that the stock market is not the economy. Now, you always hear that. The economy must be great because the stock market's up. It's not, and it never has been. The stock market is a measure of future corporate profits. That's what they look at. So you could have an economy where people weren't doing too well, or they weren't getting enough pay or something like that. But as long as corporate profits keep ramping up, that's what investors pay for. So these two sentences don't look tremendously different, but they are. They really are. It is not the economy, but the outlook for future corporate profits. Oh, I thought this was funny. I got it from The Onion. Found out the CIA, after all these years, has actually found out they've been using black highlighters. I thought that was kind of cute. Let's see. The kids are all right. You know, I'm a baby boomer. I suspect maybe some of you are boomers as well. And you know, our generation tends to think that the new kids coming out are lazy, they're slackers, they're living in their parents' basements, saving up for a new tattoo. And it's not true. It's not true. The students I'm teaching now are better than any students I've ever had. If you look at what's going on at Tulane, Tulane's been kind of amazing, by the way. We're averaging 43,000 applicants every year for 1,700 freshman slots. That's amazing. And it's that way for the last 7 years in a row. And one of the reasons is, I think Tulane, we do a lot of things very well. I'm not saying that, but we have mandatory community service where these kids have to do community service. It could be cutting down weeds. It could be tutoring kids. There's just a ton of things, but they have community service hours. And this generation wants to do it. They're more community-minded than my generation was. All I cared about was I would eat glass if I thought somebody would pay me $100,000 a year, you know. The other thing that's happened is women are better educated than men. And in 40% of the marriages in this next generation, earlier generations, they earn more money. And that's a very big deal. If you were to go to a college campus right now, and you may not notice it until I'd said it, but it is predominantly female. Tulane is 60-40 female. I have friends at schools that are 70-30, 75-25. It's happening. I actually do not know why, but it's a big, big deal. In fact, a lot of universities are trying, like the devil, to get more guys to apply. I don't know if you've ever had a boy and a girl, son and a daughter, you probably realize the daughter probably is maybe a better high school student than the guy. So maybe that's a little bit of it, but we'll see. This generation is more mobile. They move around a lot more. You know, I moved from Boston 37 years ago and came here, and that was it. They're more mobile, more willing to keep moving around for the jobs and the opportunities. A lot of them have second jobs or side hustles. They're more urban. They want to live in cities generally. If you look at what's happening in New Orleans, the real boom has been downtown, the Bywater, the French Quarter, the Marigny. That's how they want to live. They want to walk to their favorite bar. They want to walk to work. They want to walk to their dry cleaner. This is the lifestyle they want to live. And they start families later. That's another piece. The last part is sort of interesting, and you hear it when you talk to people in business, is this generation, they want adventures, travel, and stories, not stuff so much. I talked to a guy who was an antique dealer, and he said, you know, business from that demographic is kind of slow. They don't, in fact, he used something that was kind of funny. He said in terms of furniture, they don't want anything brown, which I think what he meant is antiques. They don't want to necessarily inherit things from their parents. They don't want clutter as much in their house. So we'll have to see where all that goes, if that changes over time, but it's definitely a trend. This is a very funny graph. It's done by the Brookings Institute, and it talks about what I just said, really. It's talking about men who marry up. Now, to you and me, marrying up is you marry a woman. If you're a guy, you marry a woman that has more money, or a family has more money than your family, something like that. But that's not what this is up. It's about marrying up educationally. And you can see after a big, big gap for a long, long time, it's crossed. It recently crossed where the average wife has more higher level of education than the husband does. So pretty amazing. Hats off to women, but I think it surprised a lot of people how quick it was. Our economy, the U.S. economy is 70% consumer driven. That's the way we've always been. That's the way we'll always be. That's what you need. And so one of the things is what you need for a strong economy is a middle-class consumer that feels financially confident, economically secure, because that's what drives the economy. I'm going to say something that's going to sound really curt, but it's true, is the rich already own everything and the poor can't afford anything. So it's the middle class that drives the economy. And it's always been that way. I mean, if you back, right after 9/11, and a lot of people thought this was crazy. I, of course, knew it wasn't crazy. But right after 9/11, those next couple of days, President Bush came out and said, what every American needs to do is to go shopping in the mall. And everybody's like, that is the craziest thing I've ever heard. And, people are under their desks saying, yes, I'll meet you in the food court, and nobody wanted to leave their house. But he was right that this pie graph is showing what that is. And so that's what we have to remember, is that the rich are not the job creators. The middle-class consumers are the job creators. Demand creates supply. Supply doesn't create demand. And so we have to put any effort we can into making sure that middle-class consumer is out there ready to spend and confident. The debt, this is before the outbreak. Now we've got another $3 trillion in debt. There's going to be a new battle in Congress where the Democrats want to put more in terms of unemployment benefits and such. And I think the Republicans are against it. Who knows where all that goes. But I'm talking before the outbreak. We had so much debt that it didn't leave us in a very good position to do what we need to do here. You would never operate your own companies with excessive debt like this. But the federal government, once again, before the pandemic, had $23 trillion in debt. The biggest owners of our debt, by the way, a lot of people think it's 95% China, something. It's 5% China, 5% Japan, a little less in Hong Kong. We owe 27% of the debt to ourselves. In other words, the Social Security Trust Fund, for instance, is all invested in treasuries. So that's where that comes from. U.S. government entity, we can't grow ourselves out of this debt. We would need 6-7% growth in GDP to grow ourselves out of the debt. We have, for the entire recovery, last 11 years, we were growing at about 2.5%. Sometimes we'd hit 3%. So we're nowhere near there. Even if we get back to where we were, the debt is just going to keep piling up. We're lucky because interest rates are low, but that's a very difficult situation. And for the first time ever, now our total federal debt is higher than the size of the U.S. economy. It is 100, just before the pandemic again, now it's astronomical, but it was 108% of GDP. And that is just a crazy level. And so it's made us so vulnerable and so hand-tied in terms of trying to fix what we've got here. And even before the pandemic, the current deficit was running about $1 trillion a year. So, if we look at, let's see, but some comments really. Every generation in America has gotten successively more bigger, more free, more diverse, and more developed. So we get better and better and better. We go through recessions. We go through difficult periods. We go through a period now where the country's kind of split in half. Nobody seemed to find any middle ground. I do think we will find middle ground. I have a lot of faith in it. The U.S. has sane people. They really do. And there's no churches or schools or highways named after Joe McCarthy. People eventually get to some middle ground. And one thing Warren Buffett says, which I think is great, since 1776, anyone who's bet against the United States has lost. And I think that will be the case again now and forever shall be. I guess we would think about it. This is a quote from Tim Dye. I constantly get people to come up to me and tell me that the economy is a house of cards and it's all going to collapse and such. And I always come back with this quote. And it's, as long as people have babies, capital depreciates, technology evolves, and tastes and preferences change, there's a powerful underlying impetus for growth that is almost certain to reveal itself in any reasonably well-managed economy. And so basically, democracy and capitalism are the only systems that work, and they do work. Now, capitalism is cyclical. That's just part of how it works. And you can't stop it, And it's a natural process. It's actually a good process. It gets overdrawn. It gets too hot, comes down again for some sort of recession, recharges, and moves up to a higher plateau. Now, in the middle there, in that time period, it feels awful, but it's the way it works. This is the, wanted to give you, this is a book I wrote a few years ago called Stocks Under Rocks. That's what we call the companies we follow at Birken Road Reports. And we wrote a story about 20 years of doing that, visiting all these states and visiting these executives. And all the reports are available on birkenroad.org. By the way, on the radio show, I have to admit, it's made me the most optimistic guy in the city, because this city is so full of interesting folks. It really is. And people with ideas that are really going to make it. And frankly, in the New Orleans area, the only way we're going to build out our economy is through entrepreneurship. It is a difficult place to attract big businesses to come in. It's because we're weird. We're different. I love that about it, but they're looking for cookie cutter cities to do expansions in. So it's a tough sell. I had a guy on the show a few months ago, and he had brought a technology company here, and he was from Atlanta, and I'd only been in New Orleans a couple of weeks, and I think it was last October, and so I told him, he sat down at the table at Commanders, and by the way, nobody ever says no to coming on the show. I don't know if they want to be on the show or want the free lunch at Commanders, but we'll see how that goes. But he's sitting down at the table, and I thought I would loosen him up a little bit. And I said, hey, welcome to New Orleans. It is a city full of characters. And he said, yes, we have found great diversity within the workforce. And I thought, that's not what I meant. But it's so we have to. And then he later said that an employee had approached him yesterday, see that if he could get the Mardi Gras day off. And I called Atlanta to corporate, and that's not a holiday in our corporation. I'm thinking, that's somebody else's job to talk to you about that, So that's the way it's all worked out. I want to say there's some companies in here that you may not have heard of that are phenomenal success stories. The greatest company we ever picked up coverage on, this was 23 years ago. That's how long we've been doing it. Is I traveled over across the lake to Covington, and there was a company that had just gone public called Pool Corporation, and they did wholesaling of swimming pool equipment. Not the sexiest sounding business in the world, but they have grown and grown and grown, dominated that business, got into irrigation in the front lines. That stock has gone from, let's see, I'll give you a real quote in here. When we picked them up 23 years ago, the stock was at 22 cents a share. And now this is, based up, if factoring in the splits, let's see, hold on a second. It's at $237. So if you think we don't have winners here, we really, really do. And we've had a lot of losers. And obviously in the oil field business, it has been brutal. You probably saw a couple of weeks ago, Hornbeck Offshore, which is a very well-managed company that has those vessels that go out to the offshore oil rigs. The best fleet in the industry by far had to declare bankruptcy. Tidewater declared bankruptcy a couple of years ago and came back out as a new organization. But there's a lot of great companies here. That's why the mutual fund's done so well. A couple of companies that have done very well during the pandemic might not surprise you. There's a company over in Houston called Sharps Compliance. And what they do is they take the needles you use but put it this way, you go to a doctor's office and you get a shot. He takes the needle and he puts it in a box on the wall. And that box has to be disposed of, and nobody wants that laying around. It can't just go in a landfill or whatever. Well, if it's a big hospital, there's a company called Stericycle that comes in and takes them out, I think, twice a day. But if you have less volume than that, like you're a Walgreens or a doctor's office, you'll actually put it in a box, special box to Sharps Compliance. They will record it and incinerate it. And they've done incredibly well. Another company that there's actually two companies in the state. I sat on the board of a company called Amedisys for 18 years. They're in Baton Rouge. They are the largest home healthcare company in the world. They basically, when somebody comes out of the hospital, they take care of you at home. And of course, they can take care of you at home for about 1/10 the cost of the hospital. They can, you don't want to be in the hospital because of staph infection, even before all of this. And you tend to get better quicker. So So that's been quite a business, and that stock in the last 4 years has gone from, last 5 years has gone from 30 to 200. And there's another company, oddly enough, LHC Group. They're over in Lafayette. They do the same thing. They're just a little bit smaller than Ametis, and that's been a huge, huge success as well. So there's a lot of good going on in here. And I will tell you a final story until I take questions, I guess, is the best academic experience I ever had was 11 years ago. And I brought 27 students to Omaha, Nebraska to spend the day with Warren Buffett. And that was an amazing experience. And it was during 2008. So we were there 8 days after they closed Lehman Brothers. So it was the end of the world. There's no question about that. And I thought Mr. Buffett would cancel. He did not cancel. Keep in mind, Buffett was a big buyer in 08, 09, and he's not right now. So just to put that through. But he went on with it. We flew out there, and we got tours of all the jewelry store he owns and the furniture store and all of that. He took us to lunch at his favorite place, and he made us drink cherry Cokes because he's on the board of Coca-Cola. Very warm, wonderful guy, incredibly generous with his time. You know, I do a lot of, I've given 1,200 public speeches in my time all over the world. And sometimes you meet other speakers and sometimes they're great and sometimes they're not, just the way normal people are. But Buffett blew me away. He really did. He was so kind and so warm. And he's a very funny guy. The very first question one of the students asked, and keep in mind, this is a terrible time for the market. One of the Tulane students raised his hand. He said, Mr. Buffett, he goes, how bad is it on Wall Street right now? And Warren Buffett said, you know, it's terrible. I've never heard such sad stories. I heard a story last week where an investment banker left his office in Manhattan and got to Long Island to his home and got to the threshold, and he met his wife at the door and he said, honey, we got to talk, and I don't even know how to bring this up, but darling, I'm not going to get a bonus this year, and I don't think I'm going to get a bonus next year, and we're going to have to make some changes around here, and you're going to have to learn to cook, and because we want to get rid of the chef. And she said, well, okay, but you're going to have to learn to make love so we can get rid of the gardener. So, and that was, my students love that story. Whenever I see them years later, it's like, remember the Buffett story. So, but thanks for this opportunity. I'd be happy to take questions maybe through Dan or whatever you'd like.
I can't unmute some of you, so if you've muted yourselves, do it.
Well, they can chat, I guess, huh?
Yeah, we can. Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Hi, Jackie.
Would you and Exxon right now?
Say again, Jackie.
Well, I think she said, what about Exxon right now? And
I said, would you buy an Exxon right now?
I don't think I would be a buyer of oil companies. I do think, you know, they're going to have some runs up and such, but it's a dying industry. And you know, one of the things is if you don't drill in that business, you become a self-liquidating asset. And there's no appetite to drill at all. And I know they're incredibly well managed and lean. I think the number one goal for those companies, the Chevrons and the Exxon, is to maintain the dividend, even if it starts to eat away at the company itself. So I don't think I'd be a buyer of really anything in energy right now. Let's see.
I have a question.
Yep.
Lindy.
What's the point of using fossil fuels to generate electricity as opposed to just using the fossil fuel to run the automobile? And what's wrong with nuclear? Why are you so down on nuclear?
Oh, I'm just taking when you talk to people like the Energy Institute and I mean, it's not my personal beliefs of, you know, the way it should go, but it just, you know, people don't have the stomach for it. It's, you know, things that happen in Japan, things that happen in Russia. It's a very, very, very small risk, but it's enormous. And the other thing is, you know, natural gas is, it's so plentiful. In fact, we have no idea where to put it. Every pipeline, every storage facility, every vessel is absolutely filled to capacity. And that's why the prices have dropped. You heard how oil capacity had been brought to its knees about 3 weeks ago, but natural gas has been going on forever. And these alternatives are lowering costs so quickly that it's just a lot faster than people had thought. And I just don't think these other people are going to compete on cost, particularly when they either have additional risks or pollution that won't make it in the equation. But I do think natural gas is here to stay for a long time. Sometimes you hear natural gas referred to as the bridge fuel because it's clean and it's getting us from basically coal to whatever's next. But that's really not my opinion. It's really you look at, if you start to look out at future fuel use, that's what you would see. And on the car side is really just how quick does the electric car move ahead. So far, it's moved a lot quicker than people thought. It's also, by the way, it isn't just the electric car. Car sharing like Lyft and Uber have also eaten into it, and so has higher mileage on cars. So it's not a single factor, but there's a couple that are really going to put a dent in. In fact, I mean, this isn't us saying, this isn't me saying it. The chairman of Shell came out about 6 months ago and said that world demand for oil would begin to drop by 2030. So, it is tough to make a huge undertaking, drill 7 miles into the ground and 5,000 feet of water and all of that and then think that, what am I going to get for that when it comes up? I mean, it not only is expensive, it's very risky if you're going to find anything. And then you have no idea what you're going to be able to get for it. If you drill a deep water well in the Gulf of Mexico, it's about 4 years between the time you bid on the lease with the federal government and you get and then the time you get it back to the beach and get to use it forever you wanted. So that's a tough way. And you can't hedge things out for 20 years. So this is just what we get from talking to oil executives. Most oil executives have told me that at about 55, they think they can break even if they're not in the shale. But anything below that is going to be really tough. So,
but you see a market for natural gas, right?
Yeah. Oh, a huge market. This is just going to balloon. And I think the big thing, by the way, I didn't connect the two things, and I apologize, is if we can get natural gas, enough of LNG being shipped out, and it's really expensive, but it's getting there, and the plans are humongous. That will absorb a lot of natural gas and probably drive the price up a little bit so that people that drill for natural gas can make some money. If you go into the shallow Gulf of Mexico, it's almost all natural gas. The oil's basically been drilled out of there. And then our onshore properties in Louisiana are mainly natural gas. So,
Austin Chalk up in Baton Rouge, is the outlook good for jobs and natural gas up there?
Yeah, we've got a little bit of property up there ourselves. It is slowed down a little bit, but the people that I talked to in Houston last time really are very optimistic about the chalk. And I know the landmen have been approaching us and some other people trying to put together, these parcels big enough to just sell off as a group to these oil drills. So that's something. I will tell you, the chalk has had its ups and downs. Technology keeps getting better, but I would remember, I guess it was probably 25 years ago, the chalk was white hot, and then just kind of fell out of favor. So we'll have to see. That's difficult drilling, but it's not as difficult as drilling in the water, for instance. And that shale drilling is relatively easy. It is so easy that they have these rigs they're on rails, so they just go. Making the number up, but they drill a well and then they roll it along the rail for another 1,000 yards, and then they drill there again. It's the same well hitting into that horizontal seam of oil and gas. So it's pretty incredible, and I think that business is gonna continue. We're gonna be able to get to prices that are good. The one thing is, I'm surprised there hasn't been more M&A in the oil and gas business, but people a little gun shy, like Occidental bought Anadarko, and the stock is, fallen from 100 to like $14 a share. So, people are a little hesitant these oil companies have a lot of cash on the balance sheet, but I think investors are hoping they use that for dividends and buybacks.
What about investing in these 5G technologies? Those are manufactured, the little things that supply everybody else.
Yeah, I apologize. I really don't know anything about that side of the business. I really don't. We don't follow any of those kind of on those kind of companies. And the students would really like that, by the way. This generation. The funny thing about this generation is, when it comes to investing, is things change when they take my course, because they tend to look at stocks as companies as just ticker symbols. And, they're kind of shocked when I take them out to, Jackson, Mississippi, and they meet the CEO and the CFO, and that's Fred and Alice, and that's how they made the decision to buy that extra property. So it makes it more 3D. I think the lagniappe of Birkenrode reports has been that a lot of, only about interesting thing about Tulane, by the way, our average student, we have 80% of our students come from more than 500 miles away. But one of the things that's happened since Katrina is when I started 34 years ago, very few people students stayed. There wasn't any opportunity. Now about a third of the class stays. So the school has become, universities in general have become much bigger economic incubators for the region. And I'm really, really optimistic about that. They love this city. And these incubators, the everything from Idea Village to Launchpad and such, they're smart people. And we're all on the same side.
Peter, I have a question for you. Have you canceled the Birkenrode convention, or is it postponed, or what?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Great question. I had that in front of me and didn't do anything about it. I had the notes. It was canceled this year. We did a virtual conference, a very small virtual conference. If you go to that birkenrode.org, I speak for a while and talk about a little bit about our companies. But we plan to be back in the saddle for next April. I think it's April 23rd. We've got some great new companies to show off. I think Tulane itself is going to be back in the fall, and that's going to be. And they have told us, and because we have 12 weeks or so to work this out. I mean, we can't complain, but we're building our courses to be able to teach them in person, online, and some sort of hybrid between the two of them. So we're supposed to come back armed for bear, and because a lot of students don't want to do the Zoom. They think it's I think the education's okay. It came out better than they thought, but it doesn't. It's not the experience of a university. You're there to make friends that you'll have forever, and business contacts and all of that. And that's just not in the cards. By the way, I saw Loyola yesterday came up with their own plan where they would open on time. And their proposal was very interesting, run through Thanksgiving. And when you go home for Thanksgiving, don't come back. So they would finish up the last few weeks, or it's probably 2 weeks, online, and then give the finals online and just stay there. And what they're looking at is, and God knows how this turns out, but they're looking at what a lot of people are saying, that W-shaped recovery where we start to get a rise in infections again towards as we move into winter, and that would kind of get them out earlier. So what a difficult situation it is. I've kind of been glad I was never promoted. I would not want to be looks like an awful job making that decision. So.
I have a question on natural gas.
Yep.
With the glut of natural gas, is there an opportunity to start manufacturing automobiles fueled by natural gas? And that would go through the step of the natural gas to electricity too.
I'm with you. I don't understand why natural gas hasn't taken over more. It's basically, it's done a great job in anything that's a fleet, whether it's a bus or a UPS truck or something like that, anywhere where all the vehicles sleep at night in a special place and they can all be fueled during the evening. But I'm surprised it hasn't done better. It's amazing efficiencies to it. It is very, very, very clean. And there's other things, hydrogen, different things like that. But it just seems like the country itself has moved towards electric. And I think when they really get, I know Elon Musk has developed something, but I think when they can get a really powerful electric SUV or a very powerful electric pickup truck, I don't know when that is, in our lifetime or not, but that would kind of be where it really goes. So it'd be interesting to see if they can get to that. But if you look at R&D, when you look at spending from GM and Ford and all those folks, because they're making ventilators right now, but it's all that is for electric cars. They're putting almost nothing into. I'll give you another example. Mercedes-Benz came out about a year ago. The big three in Germany, which was Mercedes-Benz, VW, and BMW, came out and said that again by 2030 they no longer plan to make an internal combustion engine. And to kind of tell you where things are according to our age, is my sons were, they're like 20 and 22 at that time. And I told them that, and they said, what's taking them so long? And I thought, how on earth could you make a change like that in such a short period of time? So it's all your perspective, I guess.
Well, isn't part of it the cost of electric vehicles now? That has to come down by virtue of more supply, and there has to be a much better distribution network.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, there's no question that people think that they can get past it. You know, I don't doubt. I mean, capitalism creates answers, and it'll be interesting to see where it goes.
Well, when people can get what they consider a reasonably priced electric car and head off across the country, knowing that they can stop almost anywhere to recharge, boom.
That's what I think, Dan. You know, I would, you know, I've heard a lot of people, friends of mine, that are thinking of getting like their second car be electric, the one that just bounces around town. Mm-hmm. But the idea of having the confidence to drive I-10 to LA would be
right.
Well, the big problem with electrical vehicles for long range is that recharging them. I mean, you can pull into a gasoline station now and fill your car up in 15 minutes. Electric automobile is 2.5 hours to fill it up.
That's a lot of eating at the diner.
Yeah, you got to stop and have lunch while you're recharging. Yeah.
A lot of it is driven by government regulations and government policy. If the federal government would grant credit to the cafe fuel mileage economy to natural gas like they've done electric, you'd see a big change there.
Maybe so. Yeah.
Peter, that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. That was great. People, I'm going to share a screen now. Peter, make sure you're not sharing screen anymore.
Okay. Yes, I have to find that button.
I'm going to share screen to show people our.
Let's see. You know what I'm going to do, Dan?
Yeah.
I'm just going to disappear. Is that okay?
Here we go.
Okay. Perfect, guys. Real pleasure.
Thank you, Peter. Adios. All right. Can you all see our schedule of speakers?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Next week, Tommy Satanovich, then Mark Romig on June 4th from New Orleans and Company. And we have Steve Scalise scheduled for June 11th. And that sounds, at this point, that's when Metairie Country Club may resume allowing us to meet.
And that's also, Dan, the day we distribute the raffle tickets.
Ah, yes. So another reason. Okay, everybody.